Okay, I think we should begin here. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome once more to our now bi-weekly update, no longer weekly update. We hope to continue with this all through the month of March. And eventually, as we get to, we see how things evolve or unfold with reference to the work that we are doing. We have been about, I would say now 26 weeks into this onslaught of the Afghan arrivals. We have been making overall progress. On our agenda today, we're going to provide an update on what has transpired in the last 2 weeks. We'll touch a little bit on the refugee crisis, and we'll talk about ongoing community support. But before we go on to the weekly update, I just want to start first by thanking you all for the continuous support that we've seen, and how the various stakeholders have really been thinking creatively about the kind of support that could be provided to us. We started out initially with the principal question, which is to be in our first of this weekly calls. It was really around housing and the big challenge that we saw around housing, which is the very foundation of resettlement. If we have better housing, if we have access to housing, good quality and affordable housing, the task will be lighter. I mean, not just for us at the Institute, but community-wide. And we have made progress. I must confess, we have not found a solution, a sustainable solution to housing for the St. Louis community, no. But with the help of many of you around the table, with the housing fund that was created in the Afghan community program that we launched with the support of Jerry Slichter, we have been able to unlock some potential in housing, and we're seeing a faster movement of people transitioning from hotels into housing. So that's something that we as a community must celebrate. But of course, in the long term, as we say, there's a lot more work that needs to be done, and hopefully there's ongoing conversations within the community about how we address that long term. But short term, we're making some progress. And besides just the housing fund that was created, it's many of you that have called and said and opened up access to landlords and property managers. So thank you for that. We've had the opportunity in this regard to meet with the Afghan community that's been here, to enlist their support in the resettlement of Afghans, because outside housing and education, there are other wraparound services that is needed for our new arrivals to be successful. And so we know that we couldn't achieve this without the engagement or the involvement of the nearly 700 Afghans in this community before the new arrivals. So we did have a very successful meeting with that community, and we've enlisted their support in various aspects, and we're working with them in committees to ensure that we're implementing the goals that we set forth in that Afghan community support program. We are looking soon to have go into our first publication. It's not going to be the newspaper, but we want to make sure that we're putting out information in languages that our new arrivals can understand, which would help with their faster integration. We're adapting to some of the needs that as time goes on, finding out ways in which we can provide halal meat. We went from understanding how essential Afghan bread was for their nutrition and just their culture, to now even understanding how we can find and access affordable halal meat and ensure that it's distributed within this community, making them feel a lot more welcome here. So those are ongoing things. We're also working now with Claim Academy to set up the coding classes for them. But the next big thing, obviously, which we're going to touch a little bit on is, we've seen some challenges with employment being slow in them getting their employment authorizations, but we're also beginning to see progress in terms of the number of people that are picking up jobs, and maybe there is an opportunity there for us to think as a community how we can enhance job training or scale up access to employment for these communities. That's something that we're thinking of and working on as time goes along. And obviously, as a resettlement agency, we cannot be isolated from everything that's going on now in the world with the Ukrainian crisis. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in more detail, but it's, we just wanted to start by saying we are paying very close attention to that. And I'm going to say to everybody that these are not normal times. What the world has been able to achieve in 3 weeks, the world hasn't been able to achieve in 70 years. The ability for peace lovers to come together and make the drastic decisions that have been taken, whether it's here in the United States to provide temporary protective status for Ukrainians that are here, and the 27 countries in Europe that have come together to provide similar status is unprecedented. But we also must recognize the fact that it took 5 years for the Syrian crisis to produce 6 million refugees. It's taken 3 weeks for the Ukrainian crisis to produce nearly 3 million refugees. Now, imagine if this drags along for another month, God bless us, it doesn't, or another 2 months, the impact that it would be. The world before this crisis had about 84 million refugees. And in 3 weeks, that number has increased and we're inching up to 88 million refugees. It's almost the size of the country Russia itself in terms of population. So that puts that in context as this not being normal times, and things may change drastically. And I'm just putting the community on notice that we may have to be more flexible than we imagine, because under normal circumstances, it would take 2 to 3 years for us to see Ukrainian refugees arriving here. But who knows? Who knows? With that, I'm just going to pause here and I'll turn this over to our Senior Vice President for Programs here at the International Institute, Blake Hamilton, for our weekly update.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Ray. And I'm going to, echo a lot of the sentiments that Ray expressed in his opening remarks. Once we get to our to the section here after our update in the discussion of Ukrainian refugees. But first, we will begin with the update. As Ray mentioned, our arrivals have slowed rather significantly. Now we have just 1 case arriving this week. This is indicative of the trend we expect to see, and the fact that this case that's arriving is actually a refugee case. This is a family of 6 that's coming to us from Iraq, and we will be welcoming them just a little bit later today. But we do now expect to see an increase in refugee arrivals, right? That's the bottom line here, is that we expect in subsequent weeks to see additional cases and to see the caseload expand, to have fewer Afghan arrivals through the APA program and more refugee arrivals over the next several months here. We've been told by our federal partners, and we've expressed this in this meeting several times over, that the expectation is that we will see a ramp up in arrivals beginning now through June, and that will stay fairly steady from June with maybe 20 to 50 arrivals a month from June to the end of the federal fiscal year. But again, of course, that is expectations, absence of any movements in the Ukrainian refugee crisis. Housing, the reduction in arrivals have really allowed us to turn our attention to housing and have more hands available to help with move outs. So over the course of the last 2 weeks since we last met, we've actually moved 18 cases into permanent housing from temporary housing in the hotels. That's 46 individuals who've made their permanent home here over the last 2 weeks. And that is through incredible effort by our resettlement team, the command center staff and volunteers, and our housing department who've helped in securing those apartments. So all props go to those team members and our volunteers who've really stepped in to help. It's about 6 a week, more than 1 a day, that we've been moving for the last 2 weeks. And we do expect 3 more cases to be moved out between now and the end of the week. So in total, now remaining in the hotels, we have 12 cases. That's a number of 79 individuals. So if you look back to the folks that have moved into housing, 18 cases, 46 individuals, this is the trend that we've been sharing this whole time. The folks who are having trouble finding housing quickly are our largest cases, and that remains the case. We have cases of 8, 9, 10, and 11 still in the hotels, comprising a large group of the folks that are still in hotels seeking permanent housing. On the flip side of that, that means we have 151 cases, 520 individuals that have moved into permanent housing. And this number again has jumped since we last met. We're really proud of this. I want to share this with the community. And like Aray mentioned, thank you all for your support in getting us connected to landlords and property managers who are willing to work with us to get folks into permanent housing. Thank you 1,000 times over for your help with that. Like always, I'm including Galip and Abdul's email. If you do have any additional folks that you'd like to connect us with who can help with housing, again, in particular 4 and 5 bedroom apartments, we'd very much love to get in touch. Turning our attention now to employment as we kind of are shifting out of a crisis mode where we're seeing dozens of arrivals on a weekly basis. We've now kind of entered this period that has allowed us to advance cases along out of that 90-day resettlement period into service provision at the Institute that accounts for more of these long-term supports, including employment. So to highlight a little bit of the work from employment, we have seen about 36 job placements since the very beginning of the year, and 12 in the last month. We have been working with our community partners and our volunteers who've likewise been assisting clients in gaining employment. And this is representative of all those numbers that have been reported. We've created mechanisms now for our volunteers to likewise report job placements where they're helping our clients gain access to employment. And we're including those placements in these numbers here. Of those 12 job placements in the last month, about 5 of those have come from our community partners. And so we're very much thankful for their support as we continue to build our team. And at this point, I'll give a quick plug again for the open positions that we currently have on our site. Those are positions that directly assist clients in getting employment. We have received on average of 140 job requests from employers on a weekly basis here at the Institute. We know that there's plenty of employers who are ready and willing to work. There are challenges still with documentation for arrivals and gaining access to early employment. Part of the team members that we're hoping to hire on board through those open positions that we have on our site, part of their responsibilities will be for helping work with those documentation issues and helping folks get employment authorization in order to get to work. But we have several open positions. We really appreciate your assistance in continuing to circulate those in your networks to grab as many eyeballs for dedicated professionals who want to engage in this work to join the team. We're very much proud of the numbers that we have related to average wage. At this point, for job placements in the calendar year, our average starting wage is $17.62 per hour. which is really fantastic when you consider the size of the cases and the number of working adults in each case. This really means that we're able to put people into employment that can help not just pay the bills and scrape by on monthly expenses, but a little bit more than that. And so we're very thankful to our employer partners. We have overall seen wages rise over the course of the last 2 quarters. And so we expect that trend to continue somewhat as we continue to place folks into positions. And I would also mention that of those jobs, 98% of those placements actually have in full benefits available to them. So we're very pleased with that development, and only a handful of part-time positions in that whole lot. So I'm happy to answer any questions around the update once we kind of move through the rest of the presentation today. But with that, I'd like to pivot to talking a bit more about the Ukrainian refugee crisis as it's playing out almost live. At a glance, I provided some numbers here for you. As Ray mentioned, as of today, reporting through yesterday showed that more than 3 million refugees now have fled Ukraine since the conflict began in full on the 24th of February. There are estimates that there's 2 million more folks who are internally displaced, but of course, these numbers are changing by the moment. And the difference here, what's the difference between internally displaced folks and refugees? Refugees, of course, are outside of Ukraine. Internally displaced folks maybe have fled from one city to another. Maybe their intent is to leave the country, but they might be in transit at this point, and these are rough estimates. You can imagine the challenges of data collection around displacement when you see apartment buildings bombed out on the news. How do you account for those individuals? So while these are official estimates from the United Nations numbers, we know that these are constantly changing. Likewise, the United Nations is still, even as of today, saying they expect a total of 5 million Ukrainians to become refugees, exit Ukraine. But if you look at what we've seen, the pace of refugees leaving Ukraine over that period, and consider how underreported this internal displacement number likely is, it is really more than likely that this number goes well beyond 5 million, as Ray mentioned earlier. Temporary protected status being granted in the EU and the United States is of course a boon to those folks that have already were present in those countries on temporary visas or work permits or student permits that are now being allowed to stay over the expiration of that period in order to maintain safety here in the US while that conflict still rages on in their home country. These temporary protected status, of course, allows folks to stay within that country that's granted that, but it is not a method of travel, right? It is not a visa category per se that allows somebody to enter on temporary protected status. This is a means of protecting people who are under temporary visas in countries that are granting the status. We are happy to see it, and happy to be able to serve folks with TPS at the International Institute through several of our services. Looking deeper into those refugee numbers, looking at refugee host countries, the slide, the lettering might be a little small here, but what we see here is that the number of refugees admitted by adjoining countries, and actually even some non-adjoining countries here, but Poland is the #1 receiver of Ukrainian refugees at this point, with just over 1.8 million. The second largest country accepting refugees at this point is Romania with 460,000, Moldova with 344,000, Hungary with 242,000, Slovakia with 220,000, and Russia with 155,000 who have fled into Russian, previously portions of Ukraine that have now been controlled by Russia, including Crimea. These numbers are changing, and in fact, I had prepared this report in part on Monday and reviewed numbers this morning. It had to very much change. It seems that Romania stepping up in a very large way, in fact, doubling the amount of refugees that they've received since the numbers I was looking at on Monday, which had been collected the previous Friday. So again, this is an extremely fluid situation. But there are many different groups on the ground in all of these countries supporting refugees who are arriving. And so I think that takes us to our next slide here around how do we support what's going on here. Ukrainian refugees are not currently being admitted to the United States. And this is a question that we receive very frequently. At this point, there has not been federal action to support refugees coming through a separate process other than the United Nations process. The United Nations process takes several years, right, in order to process an application. Folks flee their home, enter a country, state their case to the United Nations that they're fleeing due to persecution based on their membership in a particular group. Once that claim is thought to have been appropriate, they then await a three-step process. The first step is trying to gain peace and ending the conflict that drove folks from their home, negotiating a peace that allows them to return home safely. Of course, that number one resolution takes time. It takes time to negotiate a political peace to a war and negotiate safe passage for refugees to return home. The second option for the United Nations is, can they stay in that country where they've sought asylum? Temporary protected status may allow that over a short period of time, but unless there's full plans for community integration, that is likely not a long-term support. In which case, the United Nations will move to the third option, which is third country resettlement to a place like the United States. At that point, a refugee would enter the vetting process that we have as a country to vet refugee claims and for validity and priority. So that's the process that can take 2 or 3 years to complete, but that is not necessarily the process that works 100% of the time. Of course, with Afghan arrivals that we've seen recently, there was special dispensation provided for those folks as they've provided material and tactical support to the U.S. military operations in Afghanistan. And so a new route was created and established whereby they could travel here in the evacuation that occurred after the fall of Kabul. Even before that, Kosovar refugees, of which St. Louis was a major resettlement player in the 90s and early 2000s, special status was given to folks fleeing that conflict that allowed them to arrive here as refugees without going through the federal refugee, or pardon me, the international refugee settlement system through the United Nations, and rather a separate status being provided for them upon arrival as well. So though we're not currently receiving Ukrainian refugees, there is still an opportunity for an administrative fix from our federal government that might allow for Ukrainians to arrive, but at present, one does not exist. The ways that many folks are kind of cropping out, reaching out to us for assistance is folks that have been here through the Lautenberg Program or who have received temporary protected status. And these are programs that have directly brought, Lautenberg Program is a program that directly brought Ukrainians who were victims of persecution based on religious beliefs to the United States. And the Lautenberg Program has run every year and has been has faced reapproval by Congress on an annual basis. But there are Ukrainians here in St. Louis who are functionally refugees through this Lautenberg Program who are seeking assistance and seeking information about family reunification. Those who've arrived under this program are eligible to petition for reunification. So if you are working or encounter anybody who's arrived at the status, they would be allowed to petition for unification, and they can do that through the International Institute. We are here to assist with that. Additionally, folks that we've seen Ukrainian students and others who have been in St. Louis who are now subject to temporary protective status have reached out to us for assistance in a similar manner, and we are here to support those folks and get them connected to the resources that we can provide. The next slide really focuses on a question that we get a lot: what can we do to help? And functionally, we have 2 categories of assistance here. One is providing support to those agencies that are directly meeting needs on the ground in a current crisis. And that would be international organizations operating in many of those countries that I just mentioned, who are now receiving refugees from Afghanistan, including Ukrainian Red Cross, UNICEF, the World Food Program, Doctors Without Borders, and more. And many of these organizations, all of these organizations and many more are mentioned in our most recent newsletter, I believe went out yesterday, which provides a list of organizations that we would recommend connecting with to learn how you might be able to support on the ground. There is urgent need for food, shelter, clothing that is existing in these countries that are receiving folks. There's very disparate circumstances. Some have hangars and other locations where they've set up for housing. Others are working with the United Nations to secure temporary tent housing. It is still cold, it is still winter in many of these countries where folks are fleeing. And so material resources and financial resources to purchase these materials are very much needed. So I'd encourage you, if you're not already connected to our newsletter, please do so. You can sign up to our newsletter through our website to receive more information about these organizations and how you can support Ukrainian refugees both abroad and locally. And the other section here is how do we support people locally? I mentioned that there's federal administrative fixes that can be put in place to begin to welcome and share the burden with our European allies in serving refugees who are seeking safety from this conflict. And if you are so moved, I would recommend reaching out to your elected representatives to talk with them about what they are thinking, what they're hearing from the federal level about work operations or acts that might be in the works to support folks. We are doing the same and trying to reach out to hear more about any federal administrative fixes that are being discussed right now in hopes that we can deliver that information to you once we hear it. But we would certainly encourage any of you to reach out to elected representatives to urge them to take action if you so moved to do. So with that, I will actually wrap up here and kick it over to my colleague Carlos Suarez in the command center to talk to us a little bit more about the coordination of support for our new arrivals and more opportunities to get connected. Take it away, Carlos.
Well, thanks, Blake, and nice to see everyone this afternoon. Just to highlight some occurrences that are to put on your radar and to thank everyone for your support again. We did have a great celebration here for International Women's Day, really highlighting the work of and paintings of some individuals, some women throughout the course of the evening, and just want to thank everyone who were able to participate. And just to put on your radar, we are looking at some engagements during Volunteer Appreciation Week from April 17th to the 23rd and World Refugee Day on June 20th. So just to keep that on your radar, you know, we through all the volunteers that we do have coming through to support the work and the needs, I just want to say make a huge thanks and also to celebrate you know, refugees and individuals migrating to St. Louis. This is you know, in terms of International Women's Day and World Refugee Day, these are days of observance recognized by the United Nations, and so we want to really highlight these special occurrences. And just to give another thanks to our partners that have been out of the command center that have been working with us on a daily basis, including the House of Goods and the Islamic Foundation, Welcome Neighbor STL, Christian Friends of New Americans, Oasis International, Little Angels Foundation, the Seventh-day Adventist, for all of your support, from meals to volunteers to housing and apartment setups. It's been a great appreciation. And also with our soccer Saturdays, that's happening every Saturday for the next several weeks at Football Club STL with START. It's been a huge support for especially the young people that are in hotels still and that are out in their apartments with families, to give them some activities to come together and build kinship with their fellow peers. We'll go on to the next slide. So yeah, we're still, as Blake mentioned, we are moving quite a number of people into permanent housing. We still do have a need of apartment setups that's changing on a constant basis. So all that can be done through our volunteer application to sign up. And for those who have already background checks, as well as grocery shopping, general client support, and in our education department. Those are still quite a number of needs that we have. And so we look forward to continuing that engagement. And then also grocery gift card to support our clients that are still in hotels on a regular basis, and quarters for laundry. Those are still needs that we have. We have received a number of mobile phones that we're looking to also activate. So we're looking to expand support and funding for that. If there's interest in doing a campaign around cell phone data and activation. But we just want to say thanks again to everyone for really supporting our work. We'll go to the next slide. And if you're looking to volunteer, we do have a volunteer application online through our website. And our community support program led by Wafa Osman. Feel free to contact her directly, really regarding our supporting families, arriving families, more long-term basis. This is a really program that really engages with those families and looking to expand on that. And then of course, we're always open to donations and support everyone's, appreciate everyone's support who have contributed and will continue to contribute in the future. So thanks again, and I'll pass it over to Blake.
Thank you, Carlos. I just want to, highlight the work of the command center. I mean, we have seen the mission evolve, right? From primarily focusing on airport pickups and getting people into apartments to meeting, or getting people into hotels, to meeting needs in the hotels and delivering food, and now really focusing on housing. I mean, the command center has been at the center of this evolution of our resettlement process. We're very proud that the work of the command center has been recognized as promising practice nationally, and we have been sharing our alignment around the command center with other organizations that are seeking to better organize the community support that's shown up. But I want to make sure I highlight the fact that what we hear when we do these trainings is, wow, St. Louis must have some very supportive, welcoming, generous folks for you to have this much support to necessitate a command center to coordinate it all. And we agree, we do. We say we do every time, but we're very appreciative of the work of everybody around this table. And it's because of the collaborations we fostered here that we believe we have a very good foundation that if things change and we are suddenly needing to support Ukrainian arrivals, that we have the structures in place now to do this, where I can say that if we were pressed into service, or we even knew what we had in front of us when we started the Afghan program, I think we'd have been a little bit more nervous. But now that we have these structures in place, we know that we have the capacity as a community to do this work at volume, and that really just bodes well for our ability as a community to welcome more folks in the future. And so again, just want to thank you all for your continued support in welcoming these folks to our community.
Well, thank you very much, Blake. I think at this point we're going to be open to questions. I just want to check to make sure that there are no questions that I'm missing in the chat. Anita, you have a need for volunteers.
Yes, we are doing a group approach to job interview practice for the many clients that are looking for work. And we're doing the next one this Friday, March 18th, from 9:30 to 12:30. I know that Carlos, correct me if I'm wrong, there was it was set up on the volunteer local with Chrissy before she stopped her service temporarily. Is that correct, Carlos? It's the volunteer local. Oh, well, I'm sorry. It's that same link for apartment setups, etc. There's an education. If you scroll down,
Yes,
there should be an education.
there is.
And yes, and that's where people can sign up. We do provide training to the volunteers from 9:30 to 10, and then it's trainer guided workshop job interview practice for the volunteers who are with us. So yes, please, thank you.
Yeah, this is, thank you very much, Anita, for bringing that up. I said this is the new frontier in terms of our efforts in resettling the Afghans here in St. Louis. Now we need to get them into the workforce, and we will need all the help in the process as well. A few things that I want to highlight, and we will be open to suggestions and support, is Volunteer Week coming up in April. We've had thousands and thousands. I mean, I think in the last month alone, we've had over 1,000 volunteers engaged in the process, from house setup to taking families grocery shopping, to medical appointments and all of that. And maybe as a community, that Volunteer Week, which is April 17th to 23rd, if you're driving by the International Institute, maybe a box of cookies will be helpful for our thousands of volunteers that have done selflessly stepped up in this community. I think we're working together in a coalition of all agencies that have been working to support the refugees, to see what we can do to really highlight that. If you have access to the media and ways in which we could even leverage the media to be grateful to the community for stepping up at this moment, please reach out to us. We really want to make a point of how grateful we are with volunteers. But even as I say that, there's still need for more volunteers, right? We still ask for more volunteers to step up. It's a fun and exciting experience to do these house setups, to see how you set up a family to begin their journey here in America, and it's a very meaningful and gratifying experience. So if you want a group to come out, that we can work with your specific group to plan this home setups, or many other things, to administrative scanning of documents, and what Anita just mentioned, there's so many more hours of volunteer work that's available. And the World Refugee Day coming up in June is probably going to be one of the most remarkable, because there's never been a time for a day like that to be highlighted than one that's going on as we're seeing refugees swell in front of our eyes. So we are really planning to use this as an opportunity to educate the community, to engage the community, to have an understanding of why this work that we do is relevant. And hopefully it's going to be a great experience where we're going to be sharing a lot more information with you with reference to that. But we're asking that you mark that day down on your calendars. And if you've not had the opportunity to come out to the International Institute and visit with us, that will probably be a day. It's going to be a public holiday, and we hope that we're going to have a program that will enable you have an even more immersive understanding of the work that we do and why we do it. With that in mind, any other questions that, and I'll be asking the Institute team, if there's a question that has been in the chat box that I missed, please, can you draw my attention to it?
Yes, Nigel reached out to ask about the 520 individuals in permanent housing. Yes, is this number related to the original estimate from August of 1,000 refugees coming to St. Louis? And has that amount been updated? Thanks for the question, Nigel. The total number of arrivals that we've seen under the APA program is 591 individuals. We are also, though, resettling refugees as well. For this federal fiscal year, we've resettled 63 refugees since October 1st. So the numbers that I was giving is just relative to the APA arrivals at this point. And so there was really based off of the 591 that have arrived. In terms of the estimate, we don't know. We have not been given a revised number, but we have been told that we probably will not hit the cap of 1,000. But again, things change rather rapidly in this space. If you've been coming to these meetings for multiple weeks, you've heard things move around. That's because things are rapidly evolving at the federal level, and it's functionally beyond our control to be able to say how many we will actually receive. But at this point with refugee resettlement, and the last time we really talked was with our federal partners on this. This was prior to the Ukrainian crisis, but the last that we heard, we could expect an additional up to 50 a month between March and the end of the federal fiscal year, which would put us under that thousand number for the annual basis, but not too far off of it, around 800 or so. But again, a lot can happen between now and September. They're not revising down our number from 1,000, but they will let us know more information as they have it available to them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Blake. There is a question with reference to what is the new women's program. I'm going to call on Anita to talk about that.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ari. So,
yeah, Anita, I know you were trying to be behind the scenes, but
no, that's okay. That's
you on the
okay.
spot.
That's okay. So we very much wanted to do something special for the Afghan women, to kind of give them, focused literacy, development attention, English language development attention during a Saturday morning when we could also provide a children's program so that they could relax and focus on that while their children were in a safe and educational setting during that time. We had our first women's program class last Saturday. It was March 12th. It was a huge success, I think, for a first day out, especially when you consider we had snow last week. That can also impact recruitment and enrollment efforts. The idea of the class is the women study English related to a topic that is connected to a field trip that will happen the following Saturday. So the topic of this last Saturday was libraries and how to use them and vocabulary related to the libraries. They also completed library card applications. They will be going to the Central Library this Saturday to experience that beautiful building and understand what resources are available to them as library card holders. The next event will be Saturday, April 9th. I'm looking at my calendar. Saturday, April 9th will be the prep class, again, an English class for the women while their children participate in a children's program. And a shout out to MICDS, which has been our volunteer partner on this, offering a very nice children's program for these kids while their moms study English. And then that will be followed by a trip to another attraction. So we're very excited. It's gotten off to a great start. We have almost 30 people joining us for the trip this Saturday, and the women are earning the tickets. By coming to the class, the women are earning the tickets for their entire family to attend or to participate in the field trip that will be chaperoned by the Institute. And the other last thing I will say is that the dads who came with their wives on Saturday, March 12th, they ended up staying with us because I was able to staff the computer lab for them while they practiced English and typing skills. So it's ended up being a very lovely opportunity to address needs in a different way on a different day. Any questions?
Anita, how can we help you?
How can you help? Okay, well, again, I believe it's on the volunteer local link. There should be mention of volunteers needed, I believe, for the children's program and also for field trip chaperones. And I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, or Ashley Hagee is the trainer who's developing the lessons for the women and then planning the field trip experiences. We're also working in collaboration with the North American Taiwanese Women's Association that provided a very nice donation to us that is covering the cost of buses that we have to charter to take these families to the different attractions. So one huge way to help as well, if an organization of one of you community partners is interested, we would love to have somebody sponsor a bus, for example, and we'd be happy to organize a time when people from your organization could join us as chaperones. The students often tell us, teacher, we understand you, but we don't understand or we don't feel comfortable talking to Americans out there. So it's a wonderful opportunity for people from our community to serve as ambassadors for these field trip experiences. Does anyone have a question that I can answer about the program? Oh, what is the cost for the bus? Okay, good question. It's about $300 a field trip. And depending, we're taking a smaller group. The bus capacity is 47, so I only have to rent one bus. And as I said, this small fund that we were donated is covering the cost of that. And we also need snack supplies for the children's program. That's another opportunity. But I imagine as the program grows, we may need 2 buses. So that would be $600 for a day. But we have some funding to cover at least 1 bus each field trip, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much, Anita, for providing that. And I know this is an exciting opportunity for the women who are participating in this, and giving them the opportunity to come out of the houses. That's something that we've been talking a lot about. How can we make sure that the women are part of this exciting journey here in St. Louis, and you're providing an answer to that. So thank you to you and your team for that, and to all the volunteers that are supporting you.
Thank you.
Any other question? Now, I think we answered, at least you answered Elizabeth's question. If there are no other questions at this time, I would just want to again thank you all for this continuous support that you have manifested, for coming with us on this journey, as we have learned and we're growing together in this process, and really building an infrastructure here that is, the more we think about it every day, is really helping St. Louis become more and more welcoming, and really positioning ourselves as a welcoming community. We cannot wait to see what the outcome of this experience will be when we look back one year from now and see our new arrivals playing an integral part in the development of this community. And who knows what the next few months is going to be for us with everything that's happening in Ukraine. As we learn more about the Ukrainian situation and how we as a community can be involved and do something together, we will be sharing that with you. But in the meantime, the newsletter that went out has been quite comprehensive, and I hope that the information shared here by Blake has been also very helpful for you all. We're also open to suggestions and thoughts and comments as to how we as a community can respond to the Ukrainian refugee crisis, because we are not, unfortunately, we are not isolated from it. Whatever is happening or transpiring in Europe now is going to have an impact on our lives here in St. Louis. And so we as a community have to pay attention to that. So thank you very much for everything. We would reconvene again in two weeks from now, and provide you with much more update on progress with our Afghan arrivals, as well as the unfolding crisis in Europe. Take care and have a wonderful rest of the day and rest of the week.